Hello everyone. I'll try to do it. I'll try to give it due justice. Right now, I'm really exhausted. Just doing a back-to-back podcast with a 2 hours break in between. Have my coffee on right now. Have the although it's 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Kind of feeling the afternoon slump, the crash. So, could consciousness be a number, especially a large number, especially a large prime number? Oh, that's the question we're going to be discussing on self-awareness. So this discussion will automatically presuppose you're familiar with self-reference, Douglas Hofstadter, his books, Go to Leisure Bark or I'm a Strange Loop, these kind of issues, or Turing, Alan Turing's Card Gödel and Modern Logic, Contemporary Logic, Philosophy of Mathematics and Logic. Smattering, you don't have to be expert on anything because I'm not even expert on anything, but this one should be all the even though it may not seem batshit crazy, it could be like there are some, I'll try to make a cogent argument, and it's not as crazy as it may sound. Could consciousness be a number? So I'm gonna dive deep into the sort of quote unquote challenging topics real fast. I assume you're familiar with Smaranda-Schwerin primes. If you're not, think of this prime, or rather a different kind of prime. A prime which is composed of all the primes. You know what a prime number is, right? So imagine you write the first prime. Imagine a Turing tape, and on the first cell you write one number, and you go to the second cell of the second one, and you write a different number, 3. The first one is 2. The first prime is 2, then 3, then 5, then 7, and each cell contains it's in a prime number. But obviously, you can only put one unit in a Turing tape, in a cell of a Turing tape, right? So you write down all the primes one by one, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, and when you go to 11, sorry, not 9, 7, and then you go to 11, you just write 1 and 1. So it's imagine an infinite Turing tape with a unicellular Turing tape with one unit. Basically, Turing tape is like, imagine like a table or like with blocks. So that's the base. It's like an abstract Turing machine. So what happens is you keep adding prime numbers to it more and more as more are discovered and more are found. And to your horror, you realize that the number you spelled out itself is a prime number, and that number is like self-awareness. It's a concept of self-awareness, and that number can be encode and that number encodes entire human consciousness and entire human reality. I know it's a deep concept to ponder. When in a Hindus believe something called kalpa, like billions and billions of years, or yugos, yoga, yuga, yoga, like jugs, like eons, which is basically an eye blink of a of God, or like Hindu rishi on top of Everest. It's like a Hindu, imagine some Hindu rishi on top of Everest blinks an eye blink in a split second and enter universe. He misses the creation and existence of inter universe. So what does that even mean? So it's like almost like, suppose whatever we can experience can be encoded in consciousness, is a big giant consciousness, and that consciousness can be encoded or decoded and encoded in the form of number, and that number could be a large prime number which contains all prime numbers, and it's not the number line which is the basic skeletal underlying baseline, but it's the prime number which is the baseline, basically prime number. And I know you can talk about p-adic numbers, and I don't know anything about, I'm not the machinery of algebraic number theory or analytic algebraic number theory, like p-adic valuations, those concepts. But it's kind of like the prime numbers itself constitutes the basic timeline of numbers, and from that evolves our natural number line. It's like there's this, but we tend to think like Matrushka doll, that this contains that set of natural numbers or real numbers contains this, and then you can go either way. And then there was a website called Spiral, the staircase of number, infinite number staircase, where you can go to Mahler cardinal, Kuneth arrow notation, and let me see if I can bring it up. staircase number. I don't know who created it. Staircase number, infinite number. It's like Aleph null and Aleph null, Aleph one, the sub one, infinite number staircase. Can't, I don't know, Wikipedia, Wiki. I don't know if they have it anymore. It's almost like a number. It's like infinite staircase exists or like stretches out in both direction, and in one you can go infinitely higher or you can go infinitely lower. Um, okay. So anywho, so yeah, where was I? So Turing tape, consciousness, but you can say, how can a number be a consciousness? Well, I would suggest, I would assume that you are already familiar with the book. Let me find it. The other day I mentioned this book. It's one of the books that defined my mathematical philosophy. It is called a mathematical uh, a beginner's guide to, I mentioned this before and here I'm spelling it out, a beginner's guide to constructing the universe, the mathematical archetypes of nature, art and science, a voyage from 1 to 10 by Michael S. Schneider. It has been extremely influential in defining my thought process, and I was stoned probably, and I was found this almost it almost read like I could. It's very lucid, and it's like, almost like the gut theory or the TOE of mathematics. Almost, it's almost like a children's book, but it's so lucid and so simple, but it has so much complex, unifying theory. I highly recommend people to check it out. And Mathematics and Imagination by Kasner. Mathematics and Imagination. That's another book that influenced me, and of course Rudy Rucker. Rudy Rucker. I don't know if you know him. Mathematics, which is like basically talks about if can robot get high. Mathematics or spiritual robots, mathematics and imagination. And the imagination, it was by, the book I got had, it was a very old school book, probably, I don't know, 30s, I don't know, 50s, when did it come out? um and it was a red book, and it had the Aleph Null symbol on it, and it was so esoteric, and I don't, it probably didn't have the cover. So obviously now you can get the Dover version, but no, just try to get the original one if you can, because that has almost a different feel to it, and the year I don't know, the Dover year is 2001, but originally I don't know when it was, but I think it's I highly recommend that. Okay, so yeah, how can a number encode? Well, if you're familiar with the concept of pi encoding Shakespeare, almost like every reality we have, um it's like everything can be broken down into numbers, and like just like how computer works, like binary information, digits, like how like right now I have the book 1001 paintings you must see before you die. If every painting can be created with numbers, there's a numerical counterpart. So imagine if that's possible, and the reality itself can probably be simulated with numbers, with sequence of number, and that large number is a prime number, a Smarn-Whalen prime number, which has which see, if you can think of, or it doesn't have to be Smarn-Whalen prime number, it could be any number, any large number, who knows. See, imagine the largest number you can think of, that, and that large number can exceed the years of um do you know what Malaman Hogarth time space time is? Okay, never mind. So do you know, like, okay, suppose it's like a number can get so large, beyond conceivable, that it can grow so exponentially large that universe's entire universe would be like an atom, when you in comparison to that, because it becomes meaningless. Even Hofstadter talk about it. Like at one stage, one at one level, there is no difference between one followed by trillion, zillion zeros, and a one followed by trillion zeros. It's like it becomes meaningless. Like, how can you even comprehend such a large number? And what does that large number even signify? So can numbers signify reality? It's almost like you can think of a number so large that has the secret, almost like the movie Pi. What's that guy's name? The Aronofsky, with the last one guy. So yeah, that movie it's highly recommend if you haven't watched it. Movie The Pie. It has to do with Kabbalah and other things. But anyways, a number can be so large, just like infinite monkey theorem can produce Shakespeare, or like, and that Shakespeare work is found in a in encoded in the sequence in pi. Probably this entire universe could be encoded in a number, but how can that be? Well, it's just like form of coding basically. It's almost like if you're aware of the book in mathematical, the one that I mentioned by Schneider, it's almost like when you think of zero, what we can think of nothingness, and then one, which is unity, then two, which is duality. Or if you start with the prime numbers, so from okay, let's just start with duality, two, and from there comes trinity, and from there it comes five, the concept of five, and each number with each, because there is the concept of five, we can think of four. Four is automatically created, quote unquote. So it has to also do with Euclid's proof of the infinitude of prime numbers, and I published a manuscript called "Is the infinitude of Euclid's prime number the proof? Is it tautological?" But that doesn't deal with these kind of things. On the other hand, I'll recommend another paper. The link which I'll drop below. It's called "Modeling the Creative Process of the Mind by Prime Numbers and a Simple Proof of the Riemann Hypothesis." It's found in archive. It's by Huang, Ph.D., and he has his contact information. But I suggest you do it at your own, from your own volition and your own at your own discretion, and not involve my podcast with it, just for the sake of efficiency and smoothness. And so, and he basically, that's a philosophical proof of Riemann hypothesis. Almost it reads like a philosophy paper. He doesn't even, there's no heavy machinery of mathematics or anything. But I like the first part, even though it's a simple proof of Riemann hypothesis. I like the how can prime numbers be used to model the creative process. Almost like, imagine from the center of the universe, the core, that's generating these waves, sort of like the wave of an electron. The electrons have the sort of this orbits. So imagine the first orbit is 2, the prime number, and this is my it may overlap with what Shi Huang wrote, and it may not. So this is my interpretation. So I suggest you read that paper on its own basis, and probably some ideas might overlap, or I don't know. And if Professor Shi Huang is reading it, reach out to me. We can probably have a discussion, or anyone else interested in these kind of things. Reach out to me. We can get a discussion interview going. So it basically, he talks about imagination of mind, how produce. It's like it gives a mathematical model of creativity with prime numbers. But think of this way, like, imagine the center of the universe from where these waves are emanating, and there are different orbits. So first orbit is like two units away, then the 3 and the 5, and with each ripple of consciousness, some universe is being created, and this continually is getting created. It's almost like, think of spheres within sphere, balls of spheres, this sort of orbs within orbs, and each orbs, and as this sort of this warp, not a warp, what do you call those bubbles containing each bubble like matryoshka doll, and each expands like onions, and it stretches off to infinity. And as each layer of onion is created, there is so much possibilities within between those layers. Just like when you create another prime number, there are different numbers, quote unquote, created. Like if you create 2, and if you think of another prime 3, there are no between 2 and 3. But if you create 5, you have to acknowledge that you created, quote unquote, 4, and that 4 represents something, the squareness, like four-sidedness, and that has a physical counterpart. Does it make sense now, the whole thing? That's all I'm trying to convey. So he also talks about a randomness, but so that all goes into deep. Professor Shi Huang, he's actually in La Jolla, California, and I think this is one of the brilliant. It's a brilliant paper. I don't know if it'll be accepted, but and that's the problem with all these mathematicians, right? That they'll put it as a soft question, liberal fluff, but it has solid philosophy, original philosophy. Most pedantic mathematicians who do their, but again, I'm getting sidetracked now. I'm on my rant mode. But the point being, these papers get no don't surface, and I think it has solid origin philosophical research to it, and I highly suggest the paper. I'll put the link down. So, and randomness, like algorithmic information theory or like complexity theory. Like, can you think of a random number, or like what is Gregory Chetan's omega constant? You can think of it, and you can just put a symbol like omega, and it's a Chetan's constant, and that constant encapsulates a number like Sparran-Wellin prime number, or like you can think of any symbol which is that symbol denotes a Sparran-Wellin prime number, or any prime number that contains all the prime numbers, which is by definition can never finish. It's like Dr. Hofstadter talked about this train. It's like, imagine in the carriage there are these numbers like one, I don't know what he's the exact one, just look up Dr. Hofstadter carriage train. It was 2 and 3 and 5 or something, and he stretches off, each carriage has a number, but when you look from the above, it forms another number, which is self-referential number. So, can consciousness be a number? And if you can think of a number, it's like without Cantor's diagonal theorem proof, it's almost like a number which is self-aware, a number which becomes self-aware, like a prime number containing all the prime numbers. It's almost like self-awareness, and that's a mathematical representation model or component of self-awareness. I hope all this makes sense. I pretty much so, and it's a system. The only way you can step out of the system of self reference is literally, I don't know if you do fucking ayahuasca or DMT or shit like that, and you literally step out of the system of law of space time or logic, and you find that it's and that you're out of the system of consciousness or information theory or information coding theory. So I pretty much talked about everything. I actually jotted down some notes because so it's basically God. It could be equivalent to reality, which can be equivalent to universe, which can be the giant one thought. Like, imagine a piece of paper, and you scribble down something like some scratch. That scratch wave string can be a consciousness string of thought, like a music, like a musical note. So when Pythagoras, was it Pythagoras who said the music of the spheres, like everything is music. Music is the basically sound waves is the constant, is the basic, this music of the spheres, like the primeness and music of the spheres, like the waves. Everything has a vibration. We are a vibrational universe. So um and also do look for Malamud-Hogarth spacetime, Malamud-Hogarth, because the only way you can get out of it is like get out of the Malamud-Hogarth spacetime. I don't even know what that means. It's named after David B. Malamud. It's a relativistic spacetime that possesses the following property: there exists a word line lambda and an event p is from Wikipedia, and a row such that all event along lambda are a finite interval in the past of p, but the proper time along of lambda is infinite. Okay, so and talks about Turing machine, car metric, black hole vapor, and it's very little is known about it. It has to do with hypercomputation. That's the category, and when you go to hypercomputation, you find super task, Zeno machine, super recursive algorithm. It's basically it has to do with computable theory and charge Turing thesis. So I don't want to go too much into charge Turing thesis now. Basically, charge Turing thesis says um, in computable theory, the charge Turing thesis says is a hypothesis about the nature of computable functions. From Wikipedia, it states that a function on the natural numbers can be calculated by an effective method by a Turing machine, and blah blah. Kleene non-computable function. So non-computable function is and it talks about halting problem. So it's like if everything are made of bits and qubits and like discrete particles, that can be has a mathematical counterpart or model and formula, and that has a fluid and dynamic formula, which is a consciousness. Like particle becomes wave, numbers becomes. What is a number? Like a number, we think of 1, 2, 3, but when a real number line, it's almost like one can be. You can think of 3.33333, and it stretches off to infinity, like recurring. So it's not like there is a discrete something called number. Like, okay, random access machine or a Turing machine, computable theory, philosophy of mind, philosophical implications. So, and Copeland talks about it that in an open empirical question, whether there are actual deterministic physical processes that in the long run elude simulation by Turing machine. Furthermore, he states that in an open empirical question, whether any such processes are involved in the working of the human brain. Okay, and then there's the Church-Turing-Deutsch principle, which is formulated by David Deutsch, that a universal computing device can simulate even every physical process. So if you're familiar with these things, whatever the shit I spewed just now, the bullshit can actually make sense. And Church Turing thesis basically talks about basically like in a layman's term, it's like, how do I explain? Uh, just like Gödel comes with the Gödel incompleteness theorem, Turing comes with Turing's like Turing uncomputability, or like charge Turing thesis has to do with, it's like a sort of like a limitation basically. Like, and forgive me if you're an expert on this topic, do forgive me, but basically it's basically, yes, like a computable number, the function of natural numbers can be fitted by effective method. It has to do with halting problem. So I think I pretty much covered everything. um what else was I gonna talk about? Oh, okay, Hofstadter. Like, what do you mean by a large number? Like, think of Zenzi. It's like 2 to the 2 to the 2 to the 2, and you can think of it forever, and it can quickly become so large that the last final number you get, it almost has no meaning. It's like comprehension beyond comprehension. Like, it exceeds by so much, like that the particles of the universes becomes like a speck of dust. It's almost everything becomes nothing. If when a large number becomes so large. So my point is, can a large number encode everything? It's almost like a Laplacian billiards, like particles. Everything is made up of particles. Like, think of you can think of, like, let's just say 10. With 10 particles, you can think of make this sort of Lego block. So imagine there are like this finite amount of particle, and you like the permutations, not permutations, like, yeah, with different permutations you can create different universes. But that still would be a speck, because you can think of a number which is so large. Hofstadter, large number. What is Hofstadter's law? Self-referential adage. Hofstadter law, it always takes longer than expected, even when you take into Hofstadter's law. So it's a self-referential thing. But Hofstadter wrote a paper on large numbers. I can't find it. Hofstadter large number paper, because that is also relevant. Hofstadter large number paper on number numbness. I think that is it. So I'll drop all the links below. So you do let me know what you think of all these things. How did you enjoy the podcast? Or if you don't, if you hated it, what do you want me to tackle next? Or who you want me to free next, other than Hitler? Anywho, okay. So thank you for listening.